Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura. And when we buy handbags and tote bags, we often will add things on them to embellish them and give them a personality more suited to us. We put scarves on them, little keychains, boggles. We do little things that just make them more personalized. And there are some bags that you cannot embellish, and there are other bags that you can embellish. And I have found a beautiful wool bag that we are going to be able to embellish to our own personality. The tote bag is a big wool tote bag. It's already finished with a beautiful gray lining, has a closure on it, the handles are already on it, but what it does come with is an extra wool panel. We will be able to embellish and put stuff on this wool panel, and then we can put this wherever we want on either side of this wool tote bag. Working with wool is a lot of fun because it doesn't fray. And the more you work with it, the softer it becomes. It has that wonderful feel like an old wool coat. And there's many different things that we can do on this little panel before we put it on the tote bag. The tote bag kit does have a pattern to do some modern work. So we have some templates for that, some embroidery designs, but we could also use our own designs. The panel is 6 inches by 8 inches, so it does give us a nice workspace. If we have wool, we can cut out some different shapes with the wool and hand stitch those on. We can use buttons. We can put on little zippers. You can also buy many different applique shapes that you can iron on. More traditional, old school, and some fun designs. We can also make up our own designs to go on. Each bag is going to have its own personality depending on what you stitch on your wool panel. You can also use it for pins. There are many, many different ways that we can applique and embellish this piece. We can also do a free motion embroidery, often referred to as meditation sewing. And if you have embroidery floss, you can use that. If not, you can just double up on your threads or use specialty threads. I'm going to sketch out a very simple design and then just do some free motion sewing on top of the panel. To start and draw my design, I'm going to use a sliver of a bar of soap. The bar of soap marks very well on the wool, but with a little damp cloth, all of the markings are going to come off. So for my design, I'm going to start and draw a line down the center. And this is the only time I'm going to use a measurement. I'm going to start with a couple of triangles, and I'm just going to free draw these. And then on the other side, I can continue with some triangles, or maybe I'll do some loops. And a few stripes in the corners. And that's going to give me my starting point. The fun part of doing this freehand stitching is there's no right and there's no wrong. We can add as much as we want or as little as we want. I'm going to start with some white embroidery floss. It has 6 strands together, and I'm going to leave them all together and thread it on a nice fat needle with a big hole in it and just give myself some thread. Knot the bottom any way you feel comfortable, and then I'm going to start by putting that knot in the bottom and bringing it up in the front. This wool is very thick, so it's always going to cover our work from behind. Once my knot's back there, I'm going to be able to start stitching. There are so many different stitches we can do. We can stab each piece going down, going through the entire piece, and then coming back up, leaving a little bit of a space, and then stab it right back down. This is probably the easiest stitch to do. Stabbing up and then stabbing down. I'm going to do that all the way along that first line. With that last stitch, I'm going to pull it around to the back, and now I can decide what I want to do next. I'm going to do my top circle because it starts right where I ended off. And because I have enough thread, I'm going to use the same color. We can continue that stabbing stitch. We can also do a stitch that looks like a filled line. We do not need to stab right through all of the fabric. We just need to pick up a little bit. Our thread is going in one direction, but we're going to be stitching in the opposite. And we're going to take some little bites. I'm going to go in about 1/4 of an inch and just take a little stab of fabric. So we're making this loop, but when we pull that loop tight, it's going to give us this straight line. I'm still sewing in this direction, but I'm going to pick up another stitch just a little bit away from the first one. And pull that. I'm going to constantly be doing this, picking up a little bit of fabric. And I haven't gone through the back at all. I'm just using a little bit of the wool. The wool's very strong, so it's going to hold it. And this will give me something that will look like a straight line without the spaces. When I come to the end, I'm going to put that needle into the back, and from the back side, tie a bit of a knot. And to do that, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that fabric, make a loop, and then put that thread in that loop. I'm going to trim off some of the tail, but I'm going to leave a nice long one because I'm not going to see it from the front. So I have those 2 stitches done. I just randomly have picked another color, and in this case it's a nice bright green. I'm still using the 6 strands. Put a knot in the back, and let's start a new area. There are so many different stitches that we can do. They can be very complicated, they can be very simple, and you can make up your own. The idea is just to have fun and do some sewing. I'm going to do a stitch that comes up and down, so it's going to sort of look like a zigzag. So I have my circle going around, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of the fabric up at the top and then have it come down. So I'm only picking up a little bit of this top fabric. So I'm picking up a little bit at the bottom and a little bit at the top. And that is going to start giving me this type of zigzag look. We're just always taking a little piece from the bottom, and then we're going to take a little piece up at the top. And I'm going to do that all the way around my next circle. And I have those little points now sticking out. I still have some thread, so I'm going to my next part. For this stitch, I'm going to do the same as this top one. One more stitch is done. I'm going to do that knot in the back. I have orange, so orange is going to be my next color. Now we can be as fancy as we want with this, or just have fun. And in this case, I just want to stitch and have some fun and not worry about where the stitches are going to go. Just meditate and have fun stitching. Tie a knot, and let's start the next one. I think I'll fill in some French knots in this last loop. To do a French knot, we bring our thread up to the top. Then we're going to take the needle and put it very close to the bottom of that thread and wrap 1 and 2 times. And then go pretty much where we came in, maybe a thread or 2. So we have 2 loops around the needle. Hold the tail and put it back in. So that needle has 2 of those little loops on it. Hold that bottom thread out of the way and pull the needle through. You don't need to pull it all the way. We just need to stop until that knot looks nice. Put that needle through. That thread that comes out gets wrapped around that needle twice, and then that needle is going to go back in. And you're going to be able to hold this so it's nice and tight. And I'm almost beside that first hole that I came out of. I do find holding that bottom thread out of the way really helps. And then continue. And that's a French knot. Next stitch I'm going to do is a daisy stitch. So I've come out from the back, and I'm going to go right back in that same hole. So I have this big loop. I need to stitch that loop down by coming back up from the bottom. So make the size that you want, have that needle come through the top of that loop, and then go right back down. That stitch is basically going to hold that loop so it's not floppy. And that's a little daisy stitch. I'm going to do a couple of daisy stitches along this loop. These are just a few of the basic stitches that you can do. In my mind, I see a shape starting to form. I see a sun, and these would be the reflections of mountains in the water. So I'm going to do some straight line stitching to represent some water. Once you're happy with your design, we're going to be able to sew this on the bag. The bag does have a beautiful lining, zippers, and pockets inside, so we don't want to go right through the bag. We just want to stitch into that top layer. So we need to decide where we are going to put our little piece. And we can pin that in place to start with. I've taken the point of the pins and have put them underneath so they don't get caught on my thread. To stitch this on, I'm going to be using a blanket stitch. I'm going to start with a knot in the back and pull my thread out. And to make sure that I don't go through and close up my pockets, I have opened the pockets inside of the purse and have put my hand inside. And that way I can feel and make sure my stitches are good. We need to take a stitch on the side of this fabric into the gray bag. And we're only picking up a little bit of the bag. And then we go right through the black piece. So I've gone through the gray, up through to the black. And pull that thread until you have the loop. Put your needle through that loop and continue tightening it. The next stitch, pick up a little bit of the gray and then pick up a little bit of the black. Pull the thread until we have that loop. Put your needle through that loop. And tighten. Going through the loop means we close up the one end, and these are the stitches that are going through the bag. I'm picking up a little bit of this bottom fabric and the top fabric. Pulling, so I will have this loop. Go through that loop, and then when you pull, that loop makes that top piece. We need to do this around the patch. It started on one side and I've done all the way around. Now we can continue and sew this patch on or leave it open so we can use it as a pocket. You can also do a very simple whip stitch where you're just going around securing this on. Whatever stitch you do is fine. That's what makes this so much fun, because we're going to be able to do whatever we want, making it unique to us. We can do our hand stitching, machine embroidery, embellishments, whatever we want. And when we're done, we're going to have a unique bag all of our own. The measurements of the bag are about 15 inches wide, 12 inches high, and the bottom is about 4.5 inches. So it really is a good size bag. And the more we use it, the softer it's going to get, just like a wonderful old sweater. I now have a great wool bag that is going to go perfect with my winter wool sweaters. I'll put a link in the description so you can check the bag out. And as always, Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe and come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.